All right. Good morning and welcome to Berlin Cosmopolitan School online string instruction videos. Today's topic is going to be intervals. And if you're in a music class right now and you're using this theory book, which most of you are, Music Theory for Young Musicians, you're going to want to have the book open to page 40 and 41 because those pages go along with the topic. And the most important points about intervals, which are also listed in your book, I would recommend writing them down again so that you can remember, is that an interval is the distance between two notes in music. All the music that we know is made of intervals. Any melody, any chord, any harmony. And there are two ways to play intervals. The first is melodic, which is playing two notes one after the other. For example, the next way to play intervals is harmonic or together, like this. I bet those sounds already sounded familiar to most of you string players. So we're going to start with that interval, which is one we really know well from tuning. And that is a fifth. From a D to an A, there are 5 notes in between. If we count D as 1, and that's important when you're counting intervals, the starting note always gets the number 1, not 0. So we have D, we have E, we have F sharp, G, and A, and that makes up a fifth. So grab your instrument and let's play a fifth in a melodic or broken way. Great, now let's play it in a harmonic or blocked way where they're together. Good. Can you take a moment and find another fifth on your instrument? What did you find? If you're a violin player, maybe you found A, E, or maybe you found G, D, and really that could work if you're a viola or cello player. Maybe you also thought of C to G. And there's another good trick if you're a violin, viola, cello player, is that any note going over to the next string, the pattern continues. So a first finger to a first finger is a fifth, a second finger to a second finger is a fifth, and so on. If you're playing the double bass, it gets a little bit more complicated because your strings are actually tuned in fourths. Did you notice that? So the D to A for you doesn't work the same way as violins and violas because your A is lower than your D, which actually makes it a fourth down. And if you wanted to play a fifth up from the D string, what note would you play? Try it out. That's right, first finger on G. Hopefully we got there. Okay, so a fifth is only one of many intervals. And the next interval that I want to introduce to you all is an octave, which we also know pretty well from playing our scales. How can you make an octave? You go from one note, let's take a D again. And what note is 8 away from D? Count up in your heads. Remember to start on D. Hopefully you made it to the next D, because that's what an octave is. It's when you play the same note, but in a different register, a bit higher. So I'm going to try out an octave D on the violin. And when you hear that sound, it's a pretty easy one to recognize with the ears, because it's the same note twice, and it has this really loud ringing sound to it. The intervals of the fourth, the fifth, the octave, and the octave, I like to think of them as sounding very open. So right now, we're just going to test out our ears, and I'm going to play either a fifth or an octave. And I want you to try to guess, or not really guess, I want you to think hard about the sounds you're hearing and decide whether you're hearing a fifth or an octave. So here's the first one. Try not to look at my hands. I'll take it out of the screen. All right. Was that a fifth or an octave? An octave. Hopefully you heard that right. Here comes another one. That was a fifth. And hopefully you could hear that it was still an open sound, but the distance wasn't quite as big. There wasn't as big of a difference between the lowest pitch or sound and the highest sounding one. All right, so after we've gotten a pretty good handle on fifths and octaves, I want to add a fourth to that. Fourths, you can remember the sound because it's sort of like the ambulances or the police cars that are in the street. So that's the trick I use to hear a fourth. Telling the difference between a fourth and a fifth can be a bit tricky, but I always think of that ambulance trick, and that helps me. Here's a fourth again, but in a harmonic or blocked form. So here's broken and blocked. All right, nice work. So obviously fourths, fifths, and octaves are not the only intervals. We also have seconds and thirds and sevenths. So before we do any more ear training or listening, I want to do a bit of playing so that your ears can get used to hearing all the different things. And what we're going to play is called a jumping scale. So the concept is pretty simple, and we're going to take a scale that we know really well, D major, 1 octave. But instead of playing straight up the scale, we're going to do jumps. And I'm going to just play the whole thing fast once so you get an idea of what it should sound like. Right, so that was going through all of the different intervals. I'm going to do it in slow motion now, and I want you to do it with me. All right, bows on the string, and let's do a second. Ready, go. Good. Why is that a second? Because it goes from D to the note right next to it, an E. That is a second. All right, now let's do a third, starting on D. Ready, go. Good. D to F sharp, a third. Let's do a fourth now. A fourth, go. Good, and hopefully you heard that ambulance sound right there. Next, a fifth. Open strings if you're violin, viola, cello. Ready, go. All right, here comes the sixth. Ready, go. Nice. Here comes the seventh. Ready, go. Here comes an octave. Last one. Ready, go. Great. So practicing that jumping scale slowly is a very good exercise to train your ears. The trick is you just really have to think about what you're actually playing. Make sure to tell your brain, just like we did, that it's a second before you play it. That way you're making that connection, and you'll be able to soon recognize these intervals just by hearing them, not by seeing them. All right, just for fun, let's do that scale a little bit more up-tempo now without any breaks. 1, 2, ready, go! All right, nice work. Let's take a bit of a more complicated scale now. I choose C. So I'm going to start 3 fingers on G. Cellos, I recommend you start 4 fingers on G. Violas, 3 fingers on G. Basses, 2 fingers on A. All right, let's see if we can do this on the first try. The jumping scale in C. Take a moment to think about what you're going to do, where your fingers need to go, and we'll start together. 1, 1, 2, ready, go. Nice work. All right, so now we've played the intervals, we've gotten to know them, and I want to end today with a bit more ear training. I want to end this video with some more ear training. So the ones that we've worked on so far, we're hearing fourths, fifths, and octaves. And remember, all of those have an open sound, like so. Would be your octave. Here's your fifth. And your fourth. All right. The next category I like to put them into, so the first big category is fourths, fifths, and octaves, which has that open sound, are the thirds and sixths, which those have a really nice harmonic sound together. So I'm going to start with the key note of C right now. There's a third away from C, so you can hear that it's there. The notes sound close together, but it has that nice ring to it, a very pleasant sound. So if you hear a sound together and it sounds close together, but very harmonic, very agreeable together, that's your sound of a third. Now a sixth kind of has that same nice, more close, but still harmonic sound, but the notes are a bit further apart. That's easy to recognize when I play them melodically, but when I play them together, sometimes it's hard to tell between a third and a sixth. So let's do a few practices with that. I will play, where you can't see my fingers, either a third or a sixth. I'll do 3 examples, and I want you to write down whether you hear a third or a sixth. Here's the first one. Here's the second one. And the third one. What did you write down? If you thought the answer was a third, a sixth, and then another third, that was correct. Good. So we've gone through how the octaves sound, the fifths, the fourths, the thirds, and the sixths. So what's left? The seconds and the sevenths. And these, I think, are the easiest to hear, the easiest to know, just using your ears, because they are a little bit harsher sounding, if I could say it like that. C to D, for example, kind of has that more dissonant sound. It's a little bit, I would say, crunchy sounding, whereas the other ones are more pure and clean. So here's another second. Pretty easy to recognize. What about a seventh? Same thing. Also has that crunchy sound, but there's more distance between the 2 pitches. All right, so that was a crash course on all of the intervals. Your goal as you're working is to not only be able to write the intervals, but also to be able to hear them and to know when you're playing certain intervals. So I hope you enjoy the rest of your lesson today and increase your understanding of musical intervals. Have a great day.